Rabbi Professor David Golinkin, president of the Schechter Institutes, Inc., shares thoughts with us on the Sukkot holiday.
Chag Sameach. I would like to answer the question, why do we sit in the Sukkah? Of course, the holiday of Sukkot has been blessed with many beautiful laws and customs. We recite the Hallel. We have the Ushpizin custom of welcoming our ancestors into the Sukkah. The Simchat Bet HaShoeva celebrations, the Hoshanot, which we use on Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of Sukkot. We also have a beautiful custom of reading the book of Kohelet. And last but not least, we wave the Arba'a Minim, or the four species, during the holiday of Sukkot. But perhaps the most basic mitzvah on Sukkot is the mitzvah of dwelling in a sukkah. But my question is, why do we dwell in a sukkah? The Torah itself gives us two reasons. One of them is agricultural, and the other is historical. In terms of the agricultural reason, we read in Exodus chapter 23, verse 16, B'chag ha'katzir bikurei ma'asecha asher tizra b'sadeh, b'chag ha'asif b'tzet hashana b'aspecha ma'asecha min hasadeh. It says, in the feast of the ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of your work from the field. Similarly, we are told the same thing in Deuteronomy chapter 16. After the ingathering from your threshing floor and your vat, you shall hold the Feast of Booths for 7 days. You shall hold a festival, and the Lord will bless your crops and all your undertakings, and you shall have nothing but joy. In other words, both these verses in Exodus and Deuteronomy give an agricultural explanation for Sukkot, that we are thanking God for the harvest. The historical reason is found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verse 42, where it says, Basukot teshvu shivat yamin, kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshu basukot, leman yedu dorotechem, ki basukot hoshavti et bnei Yisrael b'oti otam me'eretz Mitzrayim, ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall live in booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, according to these verses in Leviticus, we sit in the Sukkah in order to retain a historical link with our ancestors and to remember all that God did for us when we left Egypt. These are the two basic reasons which you can find in any book or article about Sukkot, and the Torah gives those two explanations for sitting in the Sukkah. Of course, Jews are never satisfied with any simple explanation, and throughout the generations, they've added a number of other beautiful explanations, and I would like to share a few of those as well. Thus, for example, we have a third explanation given by the Rashbam, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, who lived in France in the 12th century. He was one of Rashi's grandsons and is known for his commentaries on the Talmud and the Bible. In his commentary to the verse from Leviticus, chapter 23, he gives another reason for sitting in the Sukkah. Quote, why do I command you to do this? Do not say in your hearts, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me, which is a quote from Deuteronomy. Therefore, the people leave houses filled with good at the harvest season, and they dwell in Sukkot as a reminder that they had no property in the desert or homes to inhabit. This is why God designated Sukkot at the harvest season, so that a person's heart should not grow haughty because of houses filled with everything good. Lest they say, our hands made all this wealth for us. End of quote. In simple English, the Rashbam is saying the Sukkah is a lesson in humility. It comes to prevent a swelled head. God commanded us to sit in the Sukkah precisely at the harvest season when we are congratulating ourselves for our successful harvest and our fancy homes. The humble Sukkah reminds us that everything we eat and everything we own comes from God. A fourth explanation is given by Rabbi Yitzchak Abuhav, a very famous Talmudist who lived in Spain in the 15th century, and his classic book on Jewish ethics is called Merorat HaMaor. And he gives this explanation, quote, when the sages said in the tractate of Sukkah, go out from your permanent dwellings and live in a temporary dwelling, they meant that the commandment to dwell in the Sukkah teaches us that a man must not put trust in his size or the strength or the convenience of his house, even though it be filled with the best of everything, nor should he rely upon the help of any man, even though he be the Lord of the land. But let him put his trust in him whose word called the universe into being, for he alone is mighty and faithful and does not retract what he promises. I think this is a hint at the lives of the wealthy Jews in Spain. They were very dependent on the largesse of the Spanish kings and queens. And it's interesting, and if not ironic, that Rabbi Abuhav died in 1493, 1 year after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492. In other words, Rabbi Yitzchak thinks that the main point of living in the Sukkah for 7 days is to increase our faith in God. When we live in a sturdy house, we are protected from the elements. Rain and cold and heat do not harm us. As a result, we begin to have faith in our homes, not in God. Likewise, we begin to place our trust in men, especially influential rulers and leaders. By living in a flimsy sukkah for 7 days, exposed once again to the elements, we realize that ultimately we must put our trust in God, who rules over our houses, the elements, and all human rulers. And finally, the last reason I would like to mention for sitting in the sukkah is my own, although I am sure that someone has said it before me. By sitting in a flimsy sukkah, exposed to sun and wind, and in some places rain and snow, we are reminded of those less fortunate than ourselves. Precisely at harvest time, when we thank God for the bounty He has given us, we must remember to share it with the poor and the hungry. And therefore, I would like to summarize a few of the reasons given for sitting in the sukkah. Number 1, to thank God for a bountiful harvest. Number 2, to remember how our ancestors lived when they left Egypt and how God helped us survive in the wilderness. Number 3, to instill in us a sense of humility at a time of year when we are liable to feel haughty. Number 4, to subject ourselves to the elements and thus strengthen our faith in God. And number 5, to subject ourselves to the whims of nature and thereby remember the poor in our season of joy. And if you should ask me what is the real reason for sitting in the sukkah, I would immediately answer with the Talmudic phrase, both these and those are the words of the living God, Ele ve'ele divrei Elohim chayim. Every one of these explanations can speak to us, but more important than expounding the Torah is to observe it. While sitting in the sukkah, every Jew will find his or her own religious, national, or personal reason for observing this beautiful mitzvah. Chag Sameach.
Rabbi Professor David Golinkin, President of the Schechter Institutes, Inc.